Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha.
We're all set, and then pin. All right, so here we are. We're in the section of the text of the 5 hindrances. So within pretty much any practice, I think, for life, the ability to have attention, stability, to attend to, or choosing to have some mental balance, some equanimity. That's a practice. It's a practice to stabilize the mind. In the world we're living in, can be quite challenging. So this fundamental practice that we just did, just grounding, relaxing, breathing, there might have been a couple of people, probably pretty rare, that their mind may have wandered a little bit during that. It's possible. And so this practice is one that if we engage in, we can have the opportunity to be a little more present, have a little more choice in our lives, be able to feel emotions, see thoughts, have body tighten up or relax, and actually have a choice about feeling them, about how we engage with them, and not have the mind body sort of drag us around to how to react and the feelings that arise, and being those feelings rather than just experiencing them, having that opportunity to even remember they're temporary. I mean, that's can be quite difficult sometimes. But if we do engage in a practice such as shamatha and daily bring some mindfulness into our day, taking some time, feel our feet on the ground when we walk, paying attention instead of being distracted. We have the ability to be more present and stable and have some more opportunity for how we engage in life. So that alone is a very important practice. We just did a refuge prayer. And in that were 6 perfections: generosity, ethics, patience, concentration, right? Concentration. Ethics, yeah, so generosity, ethics, patience, joyous effort, concentration, wisdom. So they're intertwined, they're not linear. As we develop more concentration, more presence of mind, we're more able to be ethical, we're more able to engage in life with more wisdom. As we have more wisdom, I'm able to maybe put a little more joyful effort into the things that I do instead of waste a lot of times on some things that aren't very healthy for me to do. So they all work together. But foundationally, if we don't have attention, then we really don't have much choice in our life. And that's kind of the scary thing. Whatever I'm experiencing just becomes my reality. And I don't even recognize that maybe I can actually choose a different thought or look at something differently, have a different perspective. So foundationally, the degree with which I have a choice about what I attend to becomes my reality. If I don't have much choice over what I attend to, then I don't have much choice about my experience or my reality. But the capacity to choose what I attend to, maybe some of the nice things I have in my life, or the one thing that's really bothering me. You know, what I'm attending to becomes this very real experience. And so the ability, the level to which I can choose what I attend to is a great degree of how I experience the world. Am I attending to the things I appreciate about you or the thing that bothers me? One way I'm annoyed, the other one I'm grateful. Same person, same event, same things. And then how I attend to what I'm attending to. What's the perspective and attitude? So just this piece of wisdom of understanding that how I'm experiencing the world has a lot to do with me. And the degree with which I have a choice has a lot to do with whether I can actually attend to what I choose to or not. Otherwise, we're just a prisoner of thoughts, feelings, emotions, habits, tendencies. So it's so valuable to cultivate attention. Meditation practice we just did, that's one of them, but just mindfulness exercises, practices, things that we can do to have a little effort about what we're doing. I just keep coming back to which I've brought up many times, the inconvenience of two-factor verification. Man, you actually have to copy that 6 numbers and paste it in. It's a whole thing. And, but I just have this habit, like I won't paste it, right? I'll memorize it, I'll type it in. There's things like that where we have some agency in our life, that we use our cognitive abilities, that we avoid the trap of a copy-paste world that we live in, where they quite literally rob us of our effort. We don't have to think much, don't have to make many things. You got to push buttons. And so where do we have opportunities to be mindful in what I'm doing? And whether maybe some effort's helpful here and there. And other times technology is very helpful here and there. But actually have a balance in that somewhere. So within this practice then of developing agency in our lives, the ability to cultivate attention and mindfulness, there's 5 hindrances that come up that are noted over these 2,600 years of Buddhism, but this predates that, these hindrances. They've been meditating long before the Buddha came around. And so these 5 hindrances, the first one is sensual desires, attachments, things that feel good, things that we're attached to, could be sounds, could be, desires, that places I want to go. It can be things that bring us pleasure that we really get attached to. We spent a couple weeks on those attachments and how they can really take us away from doing things that they're really meaningful in our lives. And so with the 5 hindrances, they come up in the context of I'm trying to meditate, and then I'll have all these desires that pop up and comforts that I'd like take me away. The next one's ill will, sort of malice, angry thoughts and ill will can take us away. We'll go through that today, but we've been talking about it, and I think it's really important, is to recognize how it hinders us in how we engage with others, how we engage with people in our lives, what we do all day long. We may notice, attachments, the things that I want to do, and it's just a simple one, got stuff to do, and there's somebody at my door, man, wants to talk to me. Like, really? Yeah, time for another human being. We can have a conversation. But sometimes I have things to do, and we don't sometimes give attention to somebody. And then, we think about all the things that are pleasant to do that are kind of taking me away from things that are really valuable to do. our attachments, how we think other people should be, and so forth. So that comes up. So we had a couple weeks on our attachments and how they can get in the way. And so now in the text, we are on malice. So ill will. So if we think about a lot of our lives here and what goes with the teachings is attachment and aversion. I like this, I don't like this. So malice, it's going to be in this I don't like, and ill will comes up, and anger, frustration, annoyance, things of that nature. This is going to get, as they do, to some nitty gritty stuff, but I think it's so important to bring it into our everyday life in real subtle ways. Computer's having a little funny thing going on here. So malice, the wish to give harm, may rise towards many objects, a particular person, physical pain or mental anguish, loneliness, conflicting ideas, political figures, sounds, or whatever else meets with our disapproval. Malice is an unpleasant state that makes us vengeful, cynical, and fearful, but it is one that we may be familiar with, one that distracts us from using our human potential to do good. Malice causes our actions to contradict Dharma advice, and as a result, we fall into unfortunate rebirths. It is likened to a thief that steals our virtue and a storehouse filled with all types of harsh speech. If malice arises when we sit in meditation, we may spend the entire session ruminating on the harms done to us, such that any concentration, except on the object of our anger, becomes impossible. Nagarjuna quotes Sakra, the king of the Devas, asking the Buddha, "What thing is it which, killed, brings peace and security? What thing is it which, slain, has no regrets? What thing is it which is the root of venomousness?" I don't think I can see the other sentence. I have this thing popping up on my, I can almost get there. And which devours and destroys all forms of goodness. What thing is it which one slays and then one is praised? What thing is it which, slain, brings one no more distress? The Buddha replies, if one kills anger, the mind will be peaceful and secure. If one slays anger, the mind will have no regrets. It is anger which is the root of venomousness. It is anger which destroys all forms of goodness. If one slays anger, all Buddhas offer praise. If one slays anger, one has no more distress. Recognizing the disadvantages of anger and malice, turn your mind to the kindness of others, releasing the judgmental, vengeful attitude. Cultivate forgiveness and love. Our meditation on love should be personal. It is not difficult to wish well to an amorphous group of sentient beings suffering on the other side of the world, but wishing specific individuals to have happiness and its causes, especially those we know. Sentences keep going away. Do you guys see that online, or is it just me? Okay, you guys are seeing. Okay, I'm not making this up. Okay, especially those we know who have different political opinions or who have harmed us or our dear ones can be more challenging. Have you ever noticed that? Sometimes political stuff comes up. Yeah. Begin the meditation with individuals and gradually radiate love to all beings everywhere. All right, boy, is that happening on your screen too? Okay, good. So, anger is not a good thing. Not very helpful. It's a nice little twist, though. There, what is it that if you get rid of, would actually bring peace? If you kill someone, if you kill something, or if you do something, it doesn't bring peace. But if one does slay anger, well, then we have that peace. And so, one of the, I think, challenging things that happens as humans is understanding, first, anger arises. And to get angry at ourselves for being angry, not very helpful. Not the way to slay anger. I just created more anger. Anger is going to happen. And it'll arise, and there's a bandwidth of anger and annoyance, a little frustration, all the way up to like rage. So if you think of this bandwidth of disturbing mental emotional state of anger, it's not that I'm angry, it's that I might be a little irritable. That's on that bandwidth. A little frustrated, annoyed. And if we can work with those, I mean, it can significantly change everything else. Where's the annoyance? And then if we recognize, where the real cause of anger or annoyance is, we're going to be a lot more successful. So, of course, the cause of frustration, anger is here, not there. So you're not the cause of my annoyance. Cause of my annoyance is, I think you should be different. So I'd appreciate if you would be different. Then I wouldn't be annoyed. And so in the world that we live in, we so often will be focused on trying to change what is triggering my anger rather than the root cause of my anger. So I'm not going to slay anger by trying to remove myself from the conditions that trigger it. However, it's going to be helpful to remove myself from a lot of those conditions wherever possible, as much as possible, so I can work on the causes in a safe place where it's not being triggered all the time. So we don't want to be in an unhealthy environment. We don't want to be in an abusive environment. We don't want to, sit there and go, well, I'm in this unhealthy environment. I should be different. That's not going to work. I'm in an unhealthy environment. Let me get out of that, get healthy and well, and I'll be better able to deal with challenging people in difficult situations. So really meeting ourselves where we're at, making sure that we get to put ourselves in healthy environments around healthy people, loving kindness, compassionate people, and environments that really support and nurturing these qualities in our lives. And as we then have the conditions, we can explore the root causes, the self-grasping, my judgments about how I know the world should be. And instead of recognizing, oh yeah, maybe things happen for reasons, and everything that's unfolding is an opportunity for me to grow, learn, engage in the world in a meaningful way, be helpful in some way, or learn some lesson. And we start working on these root causes of anger based in insecurity, misperception, self-grasping. And that's a long time process. So meeting ourselves where we're at. And then the challenge that often comes up is what we call justified anger. Yeah, what about justified anger? It's a tricky word. Is there anything that you could do to me that would justify me continually to suffer by being angry? And I think, well, I don't think that's justified in my side. Valid anger, sure. Did something that was, we had agreed upon, hurt me in some way, anger rises, valid, totally valid. So justified anger often says, like, I get to have this anger, as opposed to I'm experiencing this anger and it's appropriate, but unnecessary. This justified sort of makes it necessary. And there we get into these things where sometimes, as I mentioned, we'll get angry at ourselves for getting angry instead of, oh yeah, I'm in this human body, emotions are rising, people are gonna, even my loved one, my loved one never gets me annoyed or anything, but hypothetically, it could happen, right? That we lose our temper or, say things harmful to people we love, Logically, that doesn't make sense, but it happens. And so really meeting ourselves that, yeah, we're in this human condition, we're working on ourselves, we're trying to open our hearts up, have healthier interactions. And this is the process of slaying anger rather than this, idea that I'm not going to get angry or I'm not going to, have these feelings. But when we get caught up in this sort of, my anger is justified, they did me wrong, I'm building up this resentment, and I'm going to tell all my friends about it so they can get pissed off too, and then we can all be pissed off, and then, I start labeling the causes out there that, give rise, and then anytime I meet someone or come into an environment like that, I'm going to naturally be angry. I just rationalized why it's okay to be angry in those situations instead of looking more deeply at more fundamental causes of anger within oneself. And so I could be in that same situation and have a different experience in the future. Compassion one, maybe. And so this is, I think one of the both highly motivating things to work on, but also one of the real challenging ones. It's motivating because people don't like to be angry. So I'm kind of willing to do something about it. Whereas my attachment, and I'm not so in a hurry to get rid of that, kind of good. Anger doesn't feel good. Attachment does feel good. So anger, I'm kind of motivated, but then, this journey of letting go of anger is much more of, I don't want to ignore it. I don't want to stuff it. I don't, anger, it's going to happen. It's to understand it and to engage with it in a way that's healthy and meaningful. And as we change inwardly with the understanding of how it exists, causes of anger and so forth, you're just going to find less anger, less frustration, a way of being in the world that accords with reality more. Needless to say, it's a little bit of a process. I'm laughing because if you could see my screen now, it's just going, So I'm curious. I'm going to just try something here. I'm wondering if it's related to the Kindle. Nope. I wonder what it is related to. It's when I shared screen that you guys got to see that. Okay. I'm not annoyed. It's like a strobe light, though. So Yeah, so let's just pause there for a moment. We usually have a few people in the group. We start thinking about, some of the ways that we can fall into anger or frustration. And, we have this tendency, I think, as humans to want to share it too. And then there's an appropriate expression of me sharing my feelings and my struggles with another human being. And then there's the counterproductive thing around complaining. uh, this happened and that happened, and I just tell people what an idiot so and so was, or why do people do this, or. And so there's an interesting balance between sharing a struggle, a difficult situation, and perpetual sort of complaining, and validating. And that's really a lot of our political discourse right now. If you Whatever side you're on or whatever view you have, you're in these little silos of information, and you watch this news or that news or this thing, and you're going to find a whole lot of um, blame, anger, uh, and validation, um, but not necessarily a lot of problem solving. And and so we also have this sort of tendency as when I became a school teacher, that was one of the things my professor told me is don't hang out in the teacher's lounge. Everybody's there complaining about the kids. Uh, and yeah, that's good advice. So what we did do is, created a group of teachers that would have lunch once a week together and not talk shop, you know, bring something like a potluck, kind of like not a bad thing to do. So, um, so in our life is how do we really recognize the detrimental aspects of anger, the and not kind of cling on to certain aspects that I like about it. Ill will is tricky. So malice and ill will is I want somebody to suffer, right? I want them to get theirs. That's tricky because that shows up, right? Somebody's doing some harm, you really want them to get theirs. And that's actually, I want somebody to feel pain. That's the opposite of compassion. I don't want people to suffer. And then we get in those areas where accountability can save someone's life. People doing harm and wind up in getting arrested and, don't kill some other people or don't do some things. There can be some real value. People in the recovery world, with addictions and so forth that, you know, um, I mean, my best friend killed a family of people drunk driving. And, accountability, he went to jail. He went to jail, got clean. He's got over 40 years. And he's one of the kindest people you ever meet. He, changed his life. He wound up getting 3 master's degrees, a PhD. He worked in hospice care for nearly 20 years, helping people transition in life, really open, caring human being. But accountability changed his life, right? And so accountability, even, I'm a father, grandfather now, and, my daughter would engage in activities that were actually, yeah, it's pretty funny. One of my friends, his daughters uh, just got arrested for shoplifting, 9th grade, man, shoplifting. And I was like, yeah, my daughter. And that happened, yeah, middle school just before that. And man, you could have hit me. You could have blown me over the feather. I was like, get the phone call from the police, like, what? Mike, what? And, so there's accountability, right? But no punishment. The accountability, it was, she spent her summer with me. Maybe that was punishment. And I was an auto mechanic at the time, so she used to come to the shop with me. All the guys would know her. Hey, Jessica, how you doing? She'd go in, get her little notebook, because she always had a writing assignment about the valuable lessons of not stealing and how things come and how we work. And she'd write those. And even taught her how to take tires off a car, put some brakes on it. We had the summer together. Um, and, but it was about how do we grow from these experiences? What are the, cause and effect and accountability pieces? And even when I worked with, I taught high school in North Long Beach, Compton, and some of the kids occasionally might be a little disruptive on occasion. And, but, you just give them an opportunity to change, or an accountability piece. And that shifts the environment, but never out of anger or that they're a bad person. Most of the time, step outside with them, and I used to baffle them. Actually, send them outside the classroom. Get the class back in order. I'd go out and I'd say something nice about them. Hey, I really appreciate this about you, and this and that. They're just, they're waiting for me to lecture. And then it goes, yeah, so what's going on today? What's going on there? And then, I'm sorry, and you'd find out that, their sister's in the hospital, or they hadn't eaten today, or, just all that stuff. And now we're having a conversation. And I'd be like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm sorry about all that. You need some more time out here. You want to come in? We get back to class. So, opportunities for accountability can be, I don't have these privileges anymore. Sometimes people are not healthy to have in my life right now because of who they are at that time. Maybe they could be later. But really, how do we notice when ill will shows up, as opposed to accountability in a healthy way? Cause, result, here's accountability. And, you did this thing to me, so, right now you're not a healthy person to be in my life right now. And I want the best for you. And maybe sometime in the future that could work out again, but not now. Which is very different than that ill will, and I want them to get them, and I want them to suffer, and which, we can have on our people that harmed us to suffer. Really dangerous mental state, really dangerous. Really human, though. Really human. So working with ill will is really starting to notice when those thoughts come up for harm. And can I notice that and shift it in a way that's going to be more healthy, beneficial towards oneself and others? Because who's really suffering when I want you to suffer? I'm suffering. Whereas I'm not suffering at all when I want the best for you, and I hope whatever accountability measures help you improve your life. It's a very different mind. So anybody else got any thoughts? I've been going on a thing. Keep it up. I'm going to tell you about ex-wives and all kinds of stuff. So, they're all, oh, tell me more. I can't see everybody online. So if there is someone who wants to, who does? All right, Dana.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Last time I was there, I was looking through the library that you have, and there was a book called Anger by Thich Nhat Hanh, and I've been reading it, and it's so good. And he talked about composting the energy of anger into a better energy, and I just loved that visual, and how the practice of mindfulness is what actually transforms and composts that into better energy.
Well, taking shit and turning it into fertilizer.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, there's a process to do that though. And that's the opportunity. And here is, so back to the 6 perfections, right? Generosity, ethics, patience. Patience is the antidote to anger. It's the one that's most taught as an antidote to anger. And patience is where the ability to feel uncomfortable. Right? If I have patience, I can have fortitude in difficult times, experiences, discomfort. And so much of allowing that composting to take place is to not be reactive, to not say that thing when I'm triggered in that emotional state, but rather let it settle. And then I have a shot at maybe saying something that's healthier. So much of my way of having dealt with anger is not saying anything and getting out of the moment. So having that opportunity to notice those sensations, just, our dear friend Mark Maloney, he always says a conversation in the wrong mood is the wrong conversation. And that's where, can we have a little more balance when we talk? I'm, afraid I might say something, harmful right now. So I'm frustrated. But technically, yeah, we're feeling this frustration. We don't have much choice and skill sets, and we can settle and then maybe come back to it. All right. Did somebody else have their hand up? I need you guys to tell me because I can only see. What?
Yeah, I have my hand up.
All
I
right.
I think a lot about the times where I get annoyed the most are when I'm working at a restaurant and somebody, it's like that classic thing where somebody treats you pretty poorly and then you go back to all your coworkers in the corner and you're like, guess what table 42 said to me? This was so rude and so mean and ha 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 ha. And a lot of it, like in a lot of ways, that's malice and that's ill will towards the person who was just rude to you. But in another way, and it's gossip. Like it is, you're gossiping with your coworkers about the interaction you just had. But it does relieve a lot of stress of the situation, and I think it builds a lot of interesting camaraderie with your coworkers because you all have this understanding of going through and having rude customers. And so I just wonder what the Buddhist perspective would be the on that balance of you're not necessarily complaining, but you are gossiping and you are, you know, kind of doing this othering for the customer and to you. And how do you navigate, those types of situations, similar to what you were talking about with being in the teacher's lounge? Like, how do you kind of navigate those types of situations? And what does Buddhism say about that, how it builds that camaraderie, even though it may be othering in that way as well?
Right. So when we get back to the 10 virtuous, 10 non-virtuous actions, body, speech, mind, and speech is a really important one. Yeah, if I'm having divisive speech or harsh speech, speech that divides people, and I was just kind of smiling because when you talked about waiting table, that's where I met my first wife. And man, she would have adventures with clients. I remember like her ignoring like somebody, a customer, and I like, I go fill up their coffee and go, hey, so and so's been, because that person does not exist, because he said something, right? And she's a character, but and we have these fun things that you're talking about. But what's the skillful speech? Somebody is rude, does something, and so and so said this to me, this client. You go, yeah, they must be really struggling. Because people share what they have. They're being rude in a restaurant because they're not happy and they're struggling in some way. And so, how do we balance? How do we have that camaraderie at work where we have to deal with all kinds of people, um, and some of it's inappropriate, and sometimes we need to address inappropriate behavior. But also, am I encouraging labeling other people, and those kinds of people are like that, and these people are, and now what I'm doing is, we're all agreeing that, these kinds of people are like that, and then perpetuating that versus, just having some shared experience of the difficulties and challenges at the workplace, and, just remembering that these, people are, struggling, and they're also the reason I have a job, which is, I always kind of kept in the back of my mind. And, and is there an opportunity to engage with these customers in a way that that might even be beneficial? Can I shift that interaction? Uh, so that's the challenge. The challenge is, we need to also, if our coworkers are struggling, to, and I've been there, and can we laugh about something? Uh, can we have a sense of shared struggle? That's good. But the challenge is not to stick these labels on people, reify people as being this way or that way versus, having a bad day, having their own struggles. And, and how can we engage with them maybe in a way that might be more helpful. And so I found that, that was helpful for me as a server. We were servers, we were waiters, servers. And so sometimes that could be a really good challenge. To give you an example, I once, so a school teacher, right? School teacher, some people would call, low income minority environment. And I had a full day at school. It was the end of the day. I remember being tired. It was a full day. It was hot. And I get a phone call. And the phone calls a parent, a mom. And the mom is very upset. She's very upset because her son failed, got an F, right? Got the report card. She's upset, and she's taking it out on me. Like, she's yelling at me. She's just, because she's saying I should have notified her prior to the F. Should have these notifications, and and technically we do. I actually did send something. We prior to that we had progress reports. And she's yelling, she's angry, she's yelling at me, and I'm getting defensive. I'm feeling the feelings, and I have all my justification. Like, if she stops yelling at me for a minute, I'm gonna let her know. Yeah, we did send these. These are the things we did. But as she yelled at me long enough that I was able to, instead of defend myself, I was able to recognize she's a mom who's struggling trying to raise her son, and she's afraid that her son, doesn't get an education. And she didn't want him to go to jail, or, a lot of those kids went up there. She wants him to be okay. And so by the time she got done yelling at me, instead of sharing with her the steps I did take, I just told her, I'm sorry, you're right. I could have done more to let you know. And that just changed the whole conversation. It was, what can we do now to work with your son moving forward? How can we have better communication? rather than defend myself or think how that should be. And what I found is when I'm really attending to another person and recognizing their struggles, people give what they have. Nobody gives you a hard time when they're happy. They're giving you a hard time because they're having their own struggles. And doesn't mean it's okay for anyone to give you a hard time. We need boundaries and appropriateness, but sometimes, in those situations like at work, we might have a joke or some humorous thing. But there might also be an opportunity to shift, plant another thought, that, wow, they must be struggling in some way, or something like that. And you might find an opportunity to shift someone's mind and a way of being as well. The difference is the motivation. Shared camaraderie and support with a coworker versus ill will towards another and saying things that can kind of reinforce a stereotype. Is that helpful?
Yes, that was very helpful. I appreciated that. Yeah. Especially when people are crazy, because that happens. And people, they test you.
Oh, yeah. Dear friend always says, everybody's funny. I'm funny too. We all got our stuff. Yeah, what I've never understood being a server is that, and I would never give a server a hard time. They're in charge of my food. Like I am not giving you a hard time, man. I've had servers that have given me a hard time, and I'm taking it because I'd rather them not spit my food. Um, and like, why would you give a hard time to the person who's gonna feed you? Yeah, not willing to go there. Yeah. Katie has a hand up. All right, Katie. Can't
Oh,
hear you.
I
Oh,
know. It took me a moment to unmute. Um, Thank you for the teaching and the conversation and the questions. I am appreciating the last dialogue. I'm sitting on the side of the road, so sorry if it's going to get noisy for one moment. It's a quiet road. Um, I think I've had a lot of opportunities, not in serving, but in other areas of work in the situation that is being discussed. And I think one of the things that has been really helpful for me is remembering in the teachings that whatever comes up for me is a pointing out instruction of my own mind. And so often I build more rapport and more camaraderie with people when I come and lead by example of like, oh, I'm noticing that like this is what's being catalyzed for me in this interaction. And I'm really working on like whatever it is. Like all the examples you just gave, John, of like I'm really working on having a positive or like responding with kindness, even though I'm receiving something different, or actually this is overwhelming for me. Can you take this table for a little bit? Whatever it is, like I think I've uh, I've found very, very little like genuine camaraderie when it's like formed through talking about someone behind their back, even if it's like someone that like a stranger. So that's just my own experience. And prior to that, what I was raising my hand for was I think well, I have two questions. One, I think one is that I've been watching with myself. I often will share about an experience. A lot of times, if I can, I leave the person anonymous and I'm just sharing about like what I'm working with, or maybe it's like the behavior, but I haven't identified the human um, whose behavior it is, and that's catalyzed whatever it has in my experience. And I think I'm also particularly careful, I think right now, watching because what I've received is behavior that can look really unkind from the outside. And so being careful of like not sharing uh, with people who aren't actually like Dharma practitioners and can't hold, like, who would become angry with this person versus compassionate, if that makes sense. But it feels, I don't know, it's something that's just come up recently. And I'm like, oh, I think yeah, I want to be mindful of what my sharing might catalyze in someone else's mind. Even if it's like, feels like it's a skillful thing to practice for myself. And then my other question was, I do I do feel like I'm curious your thoughts on this. Like I watch in my mind, it doesn't feel like malice. I'm not like, oh, I want this person to be harmed, but there is a part of me that's like, wow, I would really love for this person to recognize the impact that they're having on me and or in the world with this pattern, or the impact in their own being of, right, like whatever non-virtue or unethical behavior. Um, and maybe that just falls into, but I'm curious, I'm like, is there, like, how do I know if I've tipped into malice? It doesn't feel like it, but maybe I have. So that's my question. Thanks.
No, it's good to hear from you. That's the tricky piece, is the idea that loving kindness could be that somebody learns the damage that they're doing to themselves and others by non-virtue. That could be an act of loving kindness. And then the tricky part is, my own judgments around it. But if we can move, and I know your heart is one where you want people to be well. And so generally, that idea that loving kindness is the wish for people of happiness and the causes of happiness. The causes of happiness is virtue. And so wanting people to, engage, figure out what's virtuous for them that creates their happiness, that's wonderful. And compassion is, wanting people to not suffer or create the causes for suffering, so non-virtue. So what you're describing can wholeheartedly be an act of compassion. I want people to stop doing the harmful things that are creating suffering in their lives and lives of others. So that's very much compassionate. And then, so at the heart, that's meaningful. But there's often that little layer of sort of our personal attachment about how we think other people should be. And not recognizing they have their own lessons to learn. That some of the things that they're going through will be unfolding in a life in a way for them that might, be far more than I can realize. And so, just giving that heartfelt aspiration of compassion. I hope they find their way. I hope those lessons unfold for them. But I really don't know what lessons they need to learn. That's the judgmental part. I think I know the lessons they need to learn, instead of recognizing I don't know the lessons they need to learn. Hopefully I can learn the ones I need to. Is that helpful?
Yeah, that's helpful, John. I think it also is, what's coming up for me and hearing it is like, it's also nice to have that aspiration and then
Yeah.
to let it go, and like that my mind
Yeah.
should not be fixated on the other side. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. Nailed it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else before we wrap things up? So the journey this week is one in which noticing our ill will as it arises. We're in a divisive culture right now. Easy to have some ill will pop up. A lot of political stuff, a lot of things going on in the world, and and to not stuff frustration or angry feelings, to allow them, but to know that they're teaching us things. And how do I engage with others and myself in a way that's healthy for me and healthy for my way of being, where I don't inflict a whole lot more additional mental and emotional suffering, dwelling on how I think the world should be or others should be, but what can I do given the way the world is that's healthy, meaningful, productive. I mean, that's the opportunity with the people we come in contact in the world. And we have an impact. Wow, it's so much yeah, a good thing to sort of wrap with is John Francis. If you've never watched his videos, TED Talk, John Francis, I Walked the Earth. He was silent for like 22 years, no, he's silent 17 years. He only walked places. He didn't want to deal with oil and the environment. And he started walking when he was young. I don't want to give away his whole story, but and then he was silent because he didn't want to argue. He realized he was always arguing. Like he learned more when he was quiet and listened. And during that whole time that he's walking and was silent, he got like a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, a PhD. Did environmental science. He wrote regulations for oil tankers and things like that in the environment. And he spoke after 17 years on Earth Day. I think it was 2000, because he finally had something to say. And what he had to say is I think, relevant to this, is that, he studied the environment at this ecological level and biological level and trees, plants, and all that. But what he learned was we're the environment, and how we treat each other is the environment. If you want to change the environment, we need to change how we treat each other. And that was worth speaking about. And so I think those are the opportunities we have with people and challenging people or people of different views. Is how do we treat each other? How do we have dialogue? How do we learn from each other? And that other person, whatever they're saying, actually makes sense to them from their experience. It doesn't compute to me, but I have a different experience. And so how we treat each other is the environment. And I think that's a real valuable lesson. If you haven't watched TED Talk, I encourage you to. John Francis, I Walked the Earth. Plays banjo too. So can't be all bad, huh? Yeah. All right, Rachel, you got anything going there?
I do. Before I share our announcements, I noticed Carla has her hand raised if you
Oh,
want.
okay, Carla, I can't see her big because I'm pinned here and I have a flashing strobe light. So, Carla, go ahead.
Hopefully you don't have a seizure.
Yeah, I know. It's flash.
So what we talked about tonight for me is sort of, I feel like it's my biggest challenge on this path. And I think one of the reasons is because it's just, if when anger gets triggered, whether it's somebody else being angry or me being angry, there's so much self-centeredness in it that it's really hard to separate that self-centered desire for something to be different than what it is with wishing somebody well, or having compassion and loving kindness for somebody when either I'm angry or when they're angry, because it just I think the progress I'm making is I'm feeling the self-centeredness, but I still just can't separate it. It's very difficult to separate it from everything else that's going on. And that's where I'm struggling to find the healthy thing to do, because the self-centeredness is just so overwhelming. I mean, I realize when particularly when I'm angry, that it's pure self-centeredness when I get angry. So it's just hard for me to, in some ways, accept that anger, or work with it in my own anger or somebody else's in a healthy way, because of the amount of self-centeredness that comes up with anger.
I'm pretty sure everybody here can relate to that. So if you figure it out, let us know. But what a gift to have the insight that you're sharing right now. I mean, wow. Most human beings have no idea about, that capacity of insight that you are sharing right now. Yeah. And it's a journey. We just get better at it over time. I've noticed that damage control is usually best. That's why I need to, as I quoted Mark, a conversation, the wrong mood's the wrong conversation. That try to get some emotional balance before I can speak out loud. And over time, it's this process, and I'm sure, I bet I can guarantee that you are so much better at it now than that you have been in the past.
Yeah, it's just there's a certain level of frustration that it's like, okay, here we go again. I'm getting jerked all over by my emotions. And in particular, this week I've been struggling a little bit. I'm trying to help a friend who broke her leg and can't drive, by driving her to her medical appointments, and she just bitches and pisses and moans the entire time we're together. And I'm like, I don't know if I can take this anymore. And I told her, stop bitching. And then I thought, well, maybe if I change the subject, but neither of those two tactics worked. So I'm just like, fortunately, she found another ride, so I get a little bit of a break. But there's this, I'm trying to be generous with my time, but it's kind of backfiring because I don't feel good about it. I just feel traumatized after I'm done. So I'm just trying to navigate what's going on right now.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and what a gift that you show up and you're helpful, even though it is struggling, um, and that but getting frustrated ourselves for being frustrated, that's where I started. That's the loop, right? Instead of just knowing, yeah, I'm still experiencing frustration. I'm not a bodhisattva yet, apparently. And these things are coming up, and the way that you stick with it, that's fortitude, the ability to do it even though the frustration's there. And maybe, it's not that healthy to, if she can't get a different ride sometimes. But yeah, it's interesting curious if in those dialogues, it sounds like you've tried to change the subject and this and that. A lot of people have shared in the past, things about, like what's good, going on in your life, like before they can even start complaining, which, she may not be able to engage with that. But those little discussions where people are struggling, and what I generally like to do is when they're in loop, what do you think you could do about that? And they, the mind starts getting into solution instead of complaining. Like, wow, that must be really hard. That's frustrating. What do you think you can do about that? And sometimes that can shift, the mind a little bit. And then of course, push comes to shove. Just recognize you're feeling all that frustration because you have a lot to purify. And you get to purify as you engage, and just see that as a practice of purifying anger, afflictions, frustration, and that it's an opportunity.
It's
But don't get frustrated ourselves for getting frustrated.
I'll put those in my toolbox and report back to you next week.
Okay. Yeah, I'm curious. I'm going to be sitting here all week wondering how'd that conversation go. Yeah. Yeah, thanks, Carly. You always have such insight. I appreciate it. It's very practical, very real. So let us go ahead and dedicate the merit and wisdom that we have cultivated here. I'm going to share a screen. Hopefully it won't be flashing. Is it flashing? Oh, good. Okay. So a lot of things we could have done on Wednesday night, but we have gathered here to cultivate compassion, wisdom, loving kindness, to understand ourselves and our experience and how we can improve the environment by how we engage with ourselves and each other. A lot of merit there, hopefully some wisdom as well. Let us dedicate any and all merit from our time together for the benefit of all beings. May our efforts find their way into the world, reducing suffering, creating the conditions for liberation for all, and for our own continued spiritual growth, that we may ultimately recognize our own Buddha nature so we can be of greatest benefit to all. And with that context, those who would care to can join in the dedication. By this merit, may I soon attain the enlightened state of Guru Buddha, that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their sufferings. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. Om Tare